Good evening, welcome back. Today we are going to be designing a sheet metal component in Fusion 360. It's going to be a very straightforward design, and we are going to flat pattern it, and then we're going to create a drawing from that flat pattern. It's going to be a magical episode. So let's get diving in. Have a look. Here we have the sheet metal component. So it's just a very simple design. It's got a few flanges, a few holes. It's got a slot in it that happens to go across a bend line. It's made of aluminium 3mm thick. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be making a flat pattern from it. And then from that, we are going to be creating a drawing. And the drawing is not only going to include the folded model, but also the flat pattern. So it's all exciting stuff. Let's dive in. So to create a new file, we'll come along to the data panel and expand it out. And we'll navigate over to the folder that we want to save the file into. Looking good. Next, we'll go and we'll click File, and then click New Design. And here we've got the wonderful blank canvas of a new design. Good stuff. Okay, so before we get started, let's go ahead and save it. So we'll hit the diskette or Control S, and we'll call it Sheet Metal Bracket. And then we'll click Save. And we'll close our data panel. Excellent. Okay, so make sure that you're in the design environment. If you're not, click here and click Design. And we'll start by creating a 2D sketch in the Solid tab. So we'll say Create Sketch. And then we're going to click on the XY plane here. Next, we will create a center point rectangle. So to do that, we'll come to Create, and then find Rectangle, and then Center Rectangle. Next, we'll click the origin, and we'll drag our mouse out. Now, we can flick between the dimensions of our rectangle by clicking the Tab button. So we'll make sure that it is 84 wide and 58 tall. And when you're happy with that, hit Enter. Next, we'll click Finish Sketch. And we can rotate our view. Okay, so this is going to be a sheet metal component. So we're going to actually leave the Solid tab and come to the Sheet Metal tab. Next, what we're going to do is click in the Create panel, we'll click Flange. And this will be our first face of the design. And we'll click our profile there. And before continuing, we have to choose a sheet metal rule. If you've got a sheet metal rule already saved, you can already have the thickness prescribed in it. If you haven't done that already, let me know in the comments below, and I'll create another video showing how you can create sheet metal rules in Fusion 360. But for now, we'll go ahead and just click aluminium 3mm. And click OK. Next, we'll go ahead and click Flange. And we are going to make these two wings that come out from the front. And dragging the arrow, we can create our flanges. Now, the height of it, let's go ahead and make it 64mm. And click OK. So let's look at our completed model. What we've created so far are these flanges before this triangle has been cut out. What we want to do next is create these sub-flanges at the bottom. So let's go ahead to our design, and we'll go ahead and we're going to click Flange, and we'll pick this edge here. And if we use this arrow to drag it out, we can see the flange that's being created. So we can go ahead and we can change its extent, so the height of it, to 24mm. And we want to make sure that this flange is coming out of the bottom. The default bend position might be inside, so your flange might look like this. But we want to make sure that the flange is poking out the bottom. So we'll go ahead and change the bend position from inside to outside. There we go. And we can see the flange comes out the bottom of the design. Next, we'll click OK. And what we want to do next is create these smaller flanges at the front. So coming to our design, we'll go ahead and again, we'll click flange. And we'll pick this edge here. And we'll drag it out as before, 24 millimeters. However, we can see that it's intersecting there, so we're going to have to change something. Let's go ahead and we're going to change the extent of this edge. So we'll go ahead and where it says full edge here, we'll click two offsets. There we go. And now we can drag in this edge. Oh, yeah, we can drag in this edge here. That's it. We want to make sure that offset 1 is 0 and offset 2 is negative 32 millimeters. That's it. Good stuff. And as before, we want to make sure that the bend position is outside, so that it's poking out below the design. Good stuff. Let's go ahead and repeat that process for the other side. Let's go to flange. And we're going to click this edge here. And we'll drag it inwards 24 millimeters. Good stuff, good stuff. Here where it says full edge, we'll go ahead and we'll click 2 offsets. And we'll drag this arrow in so that it's offset from that edge 32 millimeters. That's it. Good stuff. Oh, looking good, looking good. Okay, so if we go back to our completed design, we can see that these flanges have chamfers on them. So we're going to go ahead and add in chamfers. So we'll come along to our chamfer tool. So we'll say modify chamfer. And then we're going to pick these 6 edges here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Looking good, looking good. And we'll drag them in and make sure that the chamfer is 4 millimeters. And click OK. Next, going to our completed model, what we want to do is create these 6 holes in it. So 4 at the base here that happen to be lined up, and then 2 on the rear face there. Let's go ahead and we'll go and create a sketch on any one of these 3 flanges. And what we're going to do is we are going to create 4 points. So we'll click point, and we'll place them arbitrarily. 1, 2, 3, 4. And next, we are going to use constraints to make sure that they're properly aligned with one another. So using the vertical horizontal constraint, here we can click this point here and this point here, and that will vertically align them. If we have the tool still selected, we can click that point there and that point there to make sure they're horizontally aligned. This point here and this point here to make them vertically aligned. And lastly, this point here to this point here so that they are aligned. And if you hit escape and drag around your points, you'll find that they stay aligned with one another. Good stuff. Okay, so let's go ahead. We want to make sure that they are positioned. So we'll go ahead and add in a dimension. There it is, create sketch dimension, or the hotkey is D. And now we'll click this point here and this point here. And we'll say that that's 8 millimeters. We'll do the same on the other side. So create a dimension between that edge there and that point there, 8 millimeters. And lastly, this point here and this edge here, 8 millimeters. Great. The last thing that we need is we need to tell these points to be roughly to be in the middle of these flanges. There's a few ways of doing this. The laziest way is to actually draw a line from that point there to that midpoint there. Hit escape, select the line, make a construction using X or this button here, and then giving it a vertical horizontal constraint. That'll make it horizontally aligned with the center point of that edge there. All right, so go ahead and click Finish Sketch, and we will go and create a hole. So go to the Create panel, click Hole, and pick the 4 points that we drew. 1, 2, 3, 4. For the distance, we'll say All. Make sure that it's simple type with simple tap type, and doesn't really matter about the drill point. And make sure its diameter is 6 millimeters. And click OK. Great. Next, we want to create the 2 rear holes. So it's exactly the same process, it's just on the rear face. So we'll go ahead and we'll create a sketch on the back face here. And once again, we are going to create 2 points. So we'll come to create, point, and click there and there. And we're going to use our constraints. So we'll say horizontal vertical constraint, and we'll make sure that these 2 points are horizontally aligned with one another. Next, we can go ahead and use the dimension tool. So create dimension and make sure that these points happen to be 22 millimeters away from the origin. Probably not the best way of doing this, but it'll do for this model. Lastly, we want to make a dimension that will place them 18 millimeters from the top there. Good stuff. All right, go ahead and click Finish Sketch. And next we'll go and create a hole. So again, pick those 2 points. Make sure that the distance is all the way through and the diameter is 6 millimeters, simple hole. And we'll click OK. Looking good, looking good. Okay, next we're going to go and we are going to make these sloped edges on the side flanges. So to do that, we'll come along here and we will create a sketch on the side of this flange here. And using the regular drawing tools, we'll say create line. We'll hover over the top here and draw an arbitrary line at an angle like this. Okay, and hit escape. Next, we'll use the dimension tool. So we'll say create sketch dimension and create a dimension between that rear edge there and this point here. And we'll say that that is 10 millimeters from the back there. We'll repeat the process for this point here and the bottom edge there. And we'll say that that is 24 millimeters. For good actually, it's not necessary in Fusion. It's all good. Okay, we'll say finish sketch. And lastly, we'll go ahead and we will say extrude. We're going to cut out this triangle from both of these flanges. So we're going to go to solid and we'll click extrude. And we'll pick this triangle here. And if you're lazy, you can drag it all the way through. But to be formal about it, we like to say extent type distance to object, this edge here, well, face here, and change the operation to cut. Next, click OK, and we would have gotten rid of that material. Next, we'll go back to the sheet metal tab, and we are going to get rid of these sharp edges by making fillets. So we'll say create, and modify, fillet, and we'll pick these 4 edges, 1, 2, 3, 4, and using the arrow, drag them in and make a fillet of 6 millimeters. Good stuff. Okay, we're just about there. The only thing that our completed model has that our current model doesn't is this slot across this bend here. Now, it looks tricky, but I promise you it's not. We'll come along to the sheet metal bracket. And what we're going to do is we are going to unfold this flange here. So to do that, we'll come along and we will click modify, and then we'll click unfold. Next, click the rear face here. And we can unfold all bends if we want to, but in this case, we're just going to pick this one bend here. There we go, and click OK. So what we've got is our sheet metal partially unfolded. Okay, so next, let's go and we're going to create a sketch, and we're going to create it on this bend here. And I really want to capture just the center point of that line there so that we can create a slot. So to do that, we'll go ahead and draw a line, and I'll create it from the top of the bend to the bottom. And I'll select it and I'll make it construction. You can make it construction by hitting the X button or hitting this button here, construction. Next, let's go and we'll say create a point at the midpoint. And lastly, we'll say create a slot, center point slot from the midpoint there. Oh, did I do that right? Create slot. Yep. Center point slot. And we'll say that that is 12 millimeters and then 4 millimeters wide. So hit 4 and enter. It seems to have not paid attention to our length, so we'll go ahead and we will make it 24 millimeters tall. So add in a dimension for the center line there, 24 millimeters. Good stuff. Next, we'll click Finish Sketch, and we'll extrude the slot like it was a regular cut. We'll say Distance to Object and select the rear face there, and click OK. And now we will refold our sheet metal. So we'll say at the top right hand corner, we can see Refold Surfaces. Click that button, and it will refold that flange that we unfolded. Good stuff. Okay, so make sure that you save. So we'll click the Save button. And what we want to do is create a flat pattern of the sheet metal part. So to do that, we'll go ahead and we will go to Create Flat Pattern. Here we have to pick a stationary face. So we'll pick this face here and click OK. And now we've got our flat patterned component. Very good. So as a quick aside, I'll show you how to export a DXF if you're cutting this out on a laser. A DXF is just a 2D line drawing, you can imagine, that you can then feed into, like, say, a laser cutter or a water jet cutter or something like that, and you can get your shape cut out. Now, the formal way of doing it is to click flat pattern, export flat pattern as DXF here, and click OK, and you can spit out a DXF file there. But I find a more robust way of doing it is to create a sketch on the sheet metal part there, and then project not only the entire shape, but also each of these bend lines. Now, why go through all the extra effort? I find that by doing this way, it always creates a perfect DXF. So there we've got our sketch. You can then right-click the sketch and say Save as DXF. And that one works every time. Great. Okay, I'll just delete that sketch because it's not really relevant. Okay, so we'll go ahead and click Finish Flat Pattern. And next what we're going to do is create a drawing. So we'll go to Design, Drawing, from Design. And next we're going to go and we're going to create a drawing, say Create New, Template. If you've got a template, you can pick it from this list, otherwise create from scratch. I'm going to choose my template and click OK. Great. And now we can pick our scale. So we might say 1:1. And by default, it's placing down our front view. We'll click there and click OK. You can drag around your view if it's not correctly in place. And next, we'll go ahead and click Projected View. So click Projected View, pick our base view, click below to make a top view, and to the right to make a side view, and in this corner here to make an isometric view. If you double click the isometric view, you can change it to shaded, and you can change its scale to maybe 1:2 or something like that. There we go. Next, we're going to hit Escape and double click our base view. We want to make sure that the hidden lines are being shown. So go ahead and choose the second icon along Style, Visible and Hidden Edges. Great. Okay, next what we want to do is we want to dimension and annotate this drawing. This is a long, laborious process and it requires a lot of discipline, which I simply don't have. So I'm going to show you very quickly how to make the dimensions, but it's up to you to fully flesh it out. So let's go ahead, we'll add in dimensions, and we'll click so this top edge here and this bottom edge here to capture the height. Likewise, we can do the same for the width. So we'll come along here, we'll say dimension between this line here and this line here, and we've got our width. And next we've also got our depth, so same thing there. To create center marks, we can come along here and click center mark and click our circles, so 1 2 3 4 5 6, good stuff. And to do side view center lines, go ahead and click center line, and you can pick 2 edges that represent the cross section of a circle. There we go. Good stuff. You can go ahead and also add in dimensions, like, say, for example, the diameter of the holes and this radius here, and you could even add in an angle there. All the detail required to show a successful geometry. So you might say the depth of that flange there, for example. Good stuff. Okay, so not a great drawing, but it'll do. We'll go ahead and save that, and we'll call it sheet metal bracket drawing. That'll do. No, I'll call it sheet metal bracket. Good. Okay, so now we've got a bit of a trick. What we want to do is we want to create a second sheet that will show the flat pattern of it. Now, that's not so straightforward, but it is very, very possible. So here we'll go ahead and say, go back to the sheet metal part, come to our flat pattern, activate it by clicking the button next to it. And now we're going to go ahead and say design, come down to drawing, and click a drawing from the design. Now, this is where I will caution you. By default, it wants to create a new drawing. However, and this is really, really key to take note, if a drawing is already open in Fusion 360, it will let you pick that drawing from this list, and into that drawing, place this view. So we'll say create a new sheet, and now we'll say okay. And now what it's done is it's gone back to our drawing, it's created a new sheet, and it's placed our flat pattern onto it. Fantastic. All right, so home stretch from here, we just need to go ahead and click table. And if we place the table in the corner, what you'll find is it will annotate each of these bends. And in the table, it will show the bend radius and angle and direction of each of those bends. Next, we'll go ahead and we are going to add in some dimensions and center marks and whatnot. So we could do this manually like we did before. So you could say dimension from here to this circle. But if you want to be lazy like me, you can come along and say dimension, baseline dimension, pick an existing dimension, and then you can create a whole bunch of other dimensions along that axis. Yeah, good stuff. Drawing is boring and should be lazy, done as lazily as possible. Bad opinion. All right, next we'll go ahead and we'll add another dimension. And there we go. And I'll do the same again, dimensions, baseline dimension. And we'll pick that bend there, that bend there, circle there, and the total thing. So from my experience in industry, when sheet metal people want drawings, what they typically want is, in the flat pattern, they want the dimensions, the total dimensions of the flat pattern, and the dimensions to each of the bend lines. Additional things like dimensions of like features matters less than those two things. Yeah, if you're a sheet metal worker, do let me know if I'm wrong. Next, go ahead and we'll create our center marks, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you can add in a dimension for the circle there. Wonderful. So now we've got two sheets, one that shows the folded component and one that shows the flat pattern component. Okay, so that's all the time we have today. We created a sheet metal component, we flat patterned it, we created a drawing from it. I think it was very, very fruitful. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something from it. If you have an idea for another lesson, please let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, thank you for watching and I'll see you next time. Bye.